AAMG. Your choice, your health, our mission.
Welcome everyone to this talk. It's going to be on the science of obesity. Why can I not keep the weight off? All right, so just some facts on obesity. The prevalence of obesity in the US was 42.4%, and severe obesity 9.2% in 2017 to 2018. So obesity is a disorder of energy balance. It's basically the calories coming in are more than the calories going out. Obesity-related conditions include heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and certain types of cancer. The annual medical cost of obesity in the US is $147 billion, and the medical cost of people who have obesity is $1,429 higher than those of normal weight. So who is more at risk of getting obese? It's non-Hispanic Blacks at 49.6%, Hispanics at 44.8%, non-Hispanic whites at 42.2%, and lastly, Asians at 17.4%. Okay, so this is a table of a breakdown of different Asians. And as you can see, the Filipino and Asian Indians, they have the highest prevalence of being overweight and probably obese as well. Chinese ethnicity and Vietnamese ethnicity, they are at lower risk of becoming overweight and also obese. So how do we calculate or how do we determine if someone is obese? We use the body mass index. So it's BMI, body mass index. It is your weight in kilograms, so you can't use pounds, divided by the square of the height in meters. Don't use inches. And it doesn't measure body fat directly, but it is correlated with more direct measures of body fat. It is also correlated with various metabolic and disease outcomes. So that's why we use body mass index. So just below, you can see if you're underweight, your BMI is below 18.5. If you're normal or healthy weight, your BMI for an Asian is 18.5 to 22.9. For other people, it's 18.5 to 24.9. So why is there a difference? It's because Asians, their body frames are smaller than non-Asians, and that's why there's a difference. If you're overweight, your BMI for an Asian is 23 to 26.9, and for non-Asians, it's 25 to 29.9. And if you're obese, if you're an Asian, your BMI is over 27. For non-Asians, it's 30 and up. Disadvantages of only using BMI. So if you have more muscle, then you're going to have a higher BMI, even though you're healthy. And again, frame size, as we said before, Asians and non-Asians, people with a bigger frame are going to have a higher BMI because muscles and bones are going to weigh more than fat. Gender, women usually have more body fat than men at the same BMI. And as you get older, you're going to have more fat than a younger person because as you get older, you have less muscle mass as you age. And if you're an athlete at the same BMI, athletes are going to have less body fat than people who are not athletic. Okay, so here are three people. They all have the same BMI, 30.8. That puts them in the obese category. They are all 6'2" and all weigh 240 pounds. So as you can see, Donovan McNabb, he's a professional football player, and Albert Pujols, a professional baseball player. They all have the BMI, but just looking at them, they obviously have a lot of muscle, lean muscle, and very little fat, putting them at a higher BMI. And you can see on to the right is our president, and just looking at his body shape, he has certainly more fat and not much muscle. So his high BMI is due to fat and not muscle. Okay, again, we have two people with the same BMI. So Serena Williams, 5'9", 155 pounds. She's a professional tennis player. And you can see just looking at her picture, she has a lot of lean muscle mass, not much fat at all. Next is Aquafina. She's a actress, rap singer. She's 5'2", 121 pounds. Like most Asians, she has some fat and a little bit of muscle. Now we're going to talk about the biggest loser. Does diet and exercise really work? So The Biggest Loser is a reality show that was on NBC for 17 seasons, and they have 12 to 18 obese, mostly obese contestants that compete to win $250,000 by losing the highest percentage of weight. It's a 30-week competition. There's professional trainers like Jillian Michaels, Bob Harper, and each week there's challenges, temptations, and each week someone gets voted off. At 30 weeks, everybody goes back to the studio and the winner is determined. So here is a table or a little summary of all the contestants in the 2009 season. There's 16, but I only displayed 7. As you can see, Danny, who was actually the winner, he's 39 years of age, 5'11". His starting weight was 430 pounds, giving him a BMI of 60. And at the end of the competition, he weighed 191 pounds, giving him a BMI of 26.6, which still puts him in the overweight category. The NIH, the National Institutes of Health, did a 6-year study, and they used contestants from season 8. They tracked them for 6 years. So as you can see, in week 0, which is the start of the competition, there were 16 people. The average BMI was 49.4. They were all put on a very low-calorie diet, 1,300 calories per day. And before the competition, they were eating about 3,500 calories per day. And they all were doing 3.1 hours of vigorous exercise per day. Week 6, the NIH tests people. Week 13, most people go home. There's only 4 left. They go home as well. Everybody is at home and they're exercising, dieting, and trying to lose as much weight as possible. At that time, their diet is 1,900 calories per day. They are exercising less, 1.1 hours per day. Week 30, they all return for testing. Looks like 1 female and 1 male dropped out. And in year 6, NIH was able to track down 11 of people and tested them. And so they tested, their body fat percentage, sugar, insulin, cholesterol, thyroid, and other hormones that are related for fat metabolism. So participants regained weight, unfortunately. So at 30 weeks, which is the end of the competition, the average weight loss was 128 pounds. Their total energy expenditure dropped, even though they really increased their exercise. The resting metabolic rate also dropped by about 610 calories per day. That is about a large meal. 6 years later, most subjects regained 90 pounds. And the average weight loss was 19.9% below when they started the competition. The total energy expenditure increased, but it was still below baseline, which is before they entered the competition. The resting metabolic rate was also below baseline by about 704 calories. And that equals 1 large meal, maybe 1.5 meals. Metabolic adaptation, which we'll talk about later, decreased by 499 calories, and certain hormones that were related to fat metabolism were lower than expected. Okay, so here's a table that just shows you the one on the left shows you that the resting metabolic rate did drop by 610 calories per day. This is after the competition. 6 years later, you think it would go back up because they regained the weight, but unfortunately it dropped even lower, 704 calories per day. On the right, metabolic adaptation, which we'll talk about, at 30 weeks, which is at the end of the competition, dropped by 290 calories per day, and by 6 years it was 500, so even lower. So here is Danny Kale. He is a 2009 winner of The Biggest Loser. So before the show, you can see him. He is at 430 pounds. After the show, he lost more than half of his weight, 191 pounds. And then 5 years later, unfortunately, he regained 100 pounds. Okay, so why do people regain their weight? Well, there was a meta-analysis of 29 long-term weight loss studies. Over half of the lost weight was regained within 2 years, and more than 80% was regained in 5 years. So there's a number of factors. One is the environment. So there's industrialization of the food system. So there's increased production, increased marketing of these inexpensive, highly processed foods. Which are those? Those are like breakfast cereals, instant noodles, chicken nuggets, chocolate bars, candy, chips, soda. And these ultra-processed foods contribute to the majority of calories consumed in the US. They're calorically dense. That means that if we were to compare 1 pound of broccoli versus 1 pound of French fries, 1 pound of broccoli, I'll just guess maybe 500 calories. 1 pound of French fries, probably 5,000 calories. And of course, they are less healthy. Food is also cheaper. And as we have these busy lifestyles, we are not cooking as much at home, except now because we have a coronavirus outbreak. Before, we were consuming a lot more in restaurants or takeout food. There's also three other factors: body weight set point theory, metabolic adaptation, and physical activity. Okay, body weight set point. So it's a theory where the body weight has a set point that's controlled by feedback loops from organs and tissues to the hypothalamus. Your organs and tissues will tell your brain how the body is. And so if you gain weight, there's signals sent to the brain, and then the brain will either increase your hunger or decrease your sense of fullness to try to get you back to a certain weight. This set point has strong genetic and hormonal influences. Environmental factors can override this biological control, which seems to be loose in overfeeding, but tight in response to weight loss. Let me just give you some examples. So if you're at a party and there's a lot of free food and a lot of free drink, then suppose your body is telling you that you're no longer hungry and you're full. Well, because there's so much food and free drink, you can override this and start eating. And there's a lot of social pressure for you to eat, because if you don't eat, then people think, oh, are you unhappy? Why are you not eating? Do you not like the food? Et cetera, et cetera. Another thing is some people have bad habits where they're watching TV or movie, they have to have a snack. So their body is telling the brain that they don't really need to eat, but because you have this habit of just eating a snack while watching TV or movie, you're going to override this control. There are also pleasure and reward centers in the brain that are associated with eating, and this can lead to overeating and overriding this biological set point. So for example, you just finished dinner and someone in the family baked some chocolate chip cookies or some cake or some pies, and just smelling the baked goods and looking at it just makes you hungry again. So and again, you can override this set point. Okay, so daily energy expenditure. So this is the amount of calories that you expend per day. There's three components. There's a resting metabolic rate, which is 60 to 70% of your total calories. Physical activity, which is 20 to 40%, which includes your activities of daily living. If you're very active, it's going to be 40%. If you're not as active, it's going to be 20%. There's also something called the thermic effect of food, which is only 10% of calories burned per day. Resting metabolic rate is the energy expended when not performing physical work. So it's basically the energy needed to survive day to day. And it is the largest contribution to energy expenditure. Okay, so your resting metabolic rate is influenced by several things. One is genetics, gender, age, and as you get older, especially after the age of 20, your resting metabolic rate will actually decline 2 to 3% per decade. There's weight, more you weigh, then the higher your resting metabolic rate will be. Height, body fat percentage, all things being equal, people with a higher body fat percentage will have a lower resting metabolic rate. And that is because muscle will burn more calories than fat. Diet, so starvation or the serious abrupt calorie reduction, those liquid diets, they can dramatically reduce resting metabolic rate by up to 30%. Likewise, restrictive low-calorie weight loss diets will cause your resting metabolic rate to drop as much as 20%. Basically, you do not want to drop your calories by too soon. So body temperature and external temperature. So as you have a fever, your resting metabolic rate will actually increase because you're generating chemical reactions to try to fight off whatever germ is in the body. external temperature. So if you're waiting outside in like 0 degrees Fahrenheit, your body has to generate heat. So it's going to have to use energy to generate that heat, and it will cause an increase in your resting metabolic rate. Glands. So your thyroid gland is helps you regulate your resting metabolic rate. So people with hyperthyroidism, for example, they will have an increased resting metabolic rate, and those people will lose weight. And oppositely, if you have hypothyroidism, you're not secreting enough thyroid hormone, your resting metabolic rate will slow and you will gain weight. Exercise. So exercise does burn calories, and it raises your resting metabolic rate by building extra muscle. So your resting metabolic rate decreases after sleep restriction, which is about 5 to 6 hours, but it does return back to baseline after recovery sleep. So not getting enough sleep is a significant risk factor for weight gain, especially African Americans and men. And what happens is if you don't get enough sleep, you feel sleepy the next day or groggy. You don't feel like doing anything. So if you had planned to do exercise, or you plan to do some gardening or some sort of physical activity, because you're so tired, you're not going to do anything. And all you want to do is just sit on the couch and watch TV. So your total energy expenditure is going to decrease. And also people who don't get enough sleep, they tend to actually overeat without knowing it. Okay, physical activity is the energy expenditure that includes exercise, the regular exercise that we do at the gym. Also non-exercise physical activity, which is the activities, daily living, cooking, cleaning, shopping, even fidgeting would do it. There's also something called the excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. And this is the amount of energy in the body that is burned after you finish exercise to return it to its normal state. So these high-intensity interval training workouts, that would be a part of excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. Physical activity, as you know, is certainly not as much as before, because many jobs are now sedentary. We are also using our cars more, and we're not walking as much or biking as much. So exercise does not prevent the slowing of the metabolic rate during weight loss, but it certainly helps preserve it as much as possible. And when you exercise, your body will have changes either in food intake or other behaviors. For example, if you were to walk 1 hour, you will burn about 200 calories. If after walking you come back home and you're hungry, which a lot of people do feel after exercising, and you decide to reward yourself by eating a chocolate bar. A chocolate bar has 250 calories. So you just walked off 200 calories, you just ate 250 calories, net gain is 50 calories. If you keep doing this, you are going to actually gain weight instead of lose weight. And approximately 80 minutes of moderate physical activity, that would be walking fast, swimming, biking, doing Zumba, for example, moderate is needed to preserve your weight loss, or 35 minutes per day of vigorous activity. Those are those high-intensity workouts. So to achieve weight loss while maintaining your resting metabolic rate, you are going to have to reduce your calories by no more than 500 calories per day. So remember, if you reduce your calories by too much, for example, going on a liquid diet, your resting metabolic rate is going to drop considerably. So you don't want to do that. And exercise expenditure, so the amount of exercise should account for 250 to about 1,000 calories per day. As training progresses, your daily energy expenditure is not going to increase as expected. And the reason is that your muscles will become stronger and more efficient. So for example, if you were to walk 1 hour every single day, and the first few months, you were losing maybe 2 pounds per week. After about 6 months, you are no longer going to lose the weight. And the reason is that your body is used to walking, used to that sort of exercise, and it's going to take much more vigorous or intensity if you want to keep losing weight. Relatively high degree of physical activity may be required for long-term maintenance of lost weight, and that's because of metabolic adaptation. Your body doesn't like you losing weight, and it wants you to be back at your baseline weight. Exercise, of course, helps in preferential loss of body fat, so that, of course, is good. Thermic effect of food. So there is an increase in your metabolic rate several hours after eating. And the reason is that there is energy used to digest your food, absorb your food, store your food, and also to extract the nutrients from the food. Protein causes a greater energy expenditure than carbohydrates and greater than fat. It also has a greater effect on satiety compared to carbohydrates and fat. So those actors and actresses that have to train to become like a superhero, and they have to become fit. What they do is they all go on a high protein, low carb, low fat diet, and the protein makes you full faster, so you don't feel as hungry. Thermogenic foods include cinnamon, chili peppers, turmeric, apple cider vinegar, salmon, green tea, coconut oil, celery, garlic, coffee, and eggs. So these foods will increase your resting metabolic rate by a bit. So in summary, weight regain after weight loss is very common. It's not because of lack of willpower and laziness. It's because of metabolic adaptation. Your body has a natural weight set point, and weight loss will start a cascade of events to maintain your weight. Losing weight will become more difficult as time progresses due to metabolic adaptation, and also as you train, your muscles will become more efficient and stronger. You want to avoid ultra-processed, caloric-dense foods. You want to be mindful of food triggers and emotional eating. So people who are depressed or anxious, they tend to eat more because the food helps to improve the mood. You want to get adequate sleep so you can maintain your resting metabolic rate. Higher protein diets and other thermogenic foods may help increase your metabolic rate. And of course, exercise helps you maintain weight loss and preserve your muscle mass. Okay, that's it.
For more information on other health topics, please visit the AAMG Health Education website. If you like this video, please give a like, and subscribe to our channel for more related content.